you need to be the advocate of your own career, because like no one is more interested than you on that, and because you may work on the greatest company what's like that ever existed. In the end, the company will think on themselves, because if they need to survive, and if to survive they need to get rid of you, they will.
All right, everyone. So it's been a while. We took a break. We're back now with a new episode, and we're just gonna dive straight in because we have no idea how to start a podcast. So we have Rael with us. And Rael, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. I'll be brief. Well, my name is Rael. I'm a product manager. I have I have worked in a variety of industries so far, from gaming to to B2B SaaS corporate. And I'm my mid 30s. I'm a Brazilian. I'm actually speaking from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro. And yeah, I think that's it. I have two dogs. It's possible that okay,
Oh,
one is there. Okay, yeah.
no,
And nice to
good.
meet the audience.
All right, nice to have you with us. For everyone who doesn't know our name, which is everyone, I'm Andre Griga, and my co-host here is Vaskrbnik. All right, let's dive into this. So, Rael, I'm just going to start with the first question, which
Sure.
is really an introduction to your role.
Hmm.
So, what exactly is your role? What do you do for someone who doesn't understand, for example, actually someone who doesn't understand tech, but then also for someone who understands tech, like what do you actually do in your role, and maybe also how you got into that role, like what was your career path, and yeah, just let's go from there.
We can start with a meme. We can start with what is the conception that a product manager does. Of course, this is not true, but there's a meme amongst developers, QAers, and designers that they do the heavy work and we just like stay around in meetings. That might be an aspect of what a product manager does, but like, and that is a funny thing because there's like what a product manager does depends on the context that he is or she, depends on what the company expect, depends on like what the company is undergoing at the moment. Maybe if you stay as a product manager for 5 years in a single place, you will be one product manager on the first year and another on the second, maybe the same one on the third. But like the bulk of what we are expected to do is that it became after 2000, not the 90s, but especially the 2000, after the advent of the internet, it became more expensive to build products because the digital product is built by digital engineers who are more expensive than regular workers and regular engineers. So a product manager, he comes to make sure that we are optimizing. That's like perhaps the best description. We are optimizing the building of the product at this precise moment. So just plays like more simply. What we are building right now, like whatever the feature is, whatever the new application, the new product is the best thing that we could have been doing now. It's the best usage of company money in my salary, my engineer salary, my QA salary, folks who are around the project. And for that, like you mainly need to know, okay, someone will be using our application. We are not building an application for the board or for our bosses. We are building to match a confluence of roads. Like, and there's where there's something that is nice to say. People tend to think that the product manager is the advocate of the customer. I don't think that is like that, because our main goal is to receive an outcome from the company and we are to match that outcome. But for that, since applications are always used by users, we need to find any issue or anything that we can improve in the user life. And by that improvement, we will be able, with that consequence, to match the company outcome. So I would say that the product manager is someone who has like one eye on the fish and one eye on the cat. One eye on what the business expect from that application, existing or new, and one eye what the user wants, what will he will be making usage of that application. Yeah, I think that's mainly it. Unless you are gaming, and that has to do with my experience. I worked on the gaming industry for 3 years and something. It was like 2 years ago, and it left me with a lot of scars, but like positive scars. It teached me a lot, and I think that the main thing is that gaming is an exception. So like as I said before, we are always trying to use software to solve an issue of the user or improve something that the user does. Unless the software is a game, then actually it's the other way around. We are trying to make the life of the user as harder as possible. Like I can give an example. Like I just started to play God of War Ragnarok. I think like 1 week ago, and I was beginning the game, and there was like, okay, choose your mode, and there was like easy. Oh, this is more focused on storytelling. Like there was a medium, this is more focused on storytelling, but a bit of challenge in combat. I said no, that's not for me. And then it was like hard. You will hardly appreciate the storytelling, and you will fight a lot. And there was like a God of War mode, and I was like, that's the one. That's the one I want. I want to suffer gaming. But so that's just a funny thing, like to say that the goal of software is usually to do not cause more issues to the user. But gaming also like it showed me how the sometimes there are small details on the user life, on the way that the user relates with how you build the application, how it looks, and they may seem small details, but they are the ones that will make you like change the user life. And once again, in changing that, you will get the outcomes that the board is expecting of that application. I never faced that on NGOs that I work with, education segment, engineering.
Mm.
That yeah, that's something singular, and also like something that comes with the role of a project manager, which is to have the eye, the eye and the ear for what the user wants. Perhaps gaming is the industry in which like users are dying to speak with you. They want to collaborate like highly, frequently with you to make the game better, to introduce this feature or that feature, and blah blah blah.
So, which industry do you prefer? Is like gaming, or I'd say more business or corporate software?
Hmm.
Where did you have a better experience overall?
Yeah, that is it's a hard country. Like the gaming industry is more exciting, uh, and in one way, it's it might be easier in one way, in one aspect for a product manager because since one of our like main tasks is okay, I need to develop something that it is meaningful for the user. So it totally makes sense that I hear the user. So let me get some time with the user. And on gaming, that is like much more easier than on the rest because the user is like dying to speak with you. On the other hand, like you have more pressure. Like if a user in corporate he doesn't like your software, he won't use it. You won't have success in your initiative, the metrics that you want to track, like why your team set out to do what it's trying to do. But on gaming, users like they shame you on Steam and stuff like that. So there is one easier aspect and there is like one harder aspect, but it is more exciting. And for me, it was a better teacher, but that's just for like the moment that I was in my career. I started as like I didn't start working as product manager per se. I started working as an entrepreneur and as more like a project manager. Like I had a company with my father, who was not like a normal engineer, and he developed a technology that is like a very like a very small water jet that goes vertically and it can cut through any material in nature, like from paper to diamond. And we commercialized that technology for the clients. So there was always software involved because software commanded the machine. And eventually, I started to realize that by communicating with clients and by hearing what they want and like how they were supposed to use our technology in their line of work, we could, with far less effort, with far less money, acquire much more in terms of like of money and outcomes. And I think that's when the product managing bite fly bit me, because okay, so this is the difference perhaps between a project manager and a product manager. The project manager is more focused on the timeline, which doesn't mean that he's not hearing to the end user, but the product manager is more, he's more worried that the user is like frequently heard, and that we are delivering every day, every week, a small bit of the application that makes sense now, that delivers something for the user now. So yeah, I'll say more like that. And after that, I went to more product manager roles.
Actually, before we dive into that, I was asked this like a while back. I'm not
Hmm.
sure when, but at some point, there are questions everywhere you see, even on LinkedIn. I saw a few. What is the difference between a product manager and a product owner?
That's a good question. Uh, I don't think I have the answer for it. There is what like the book said. Uh, I think that also goes to like those two professions. They are not new. They might sound new because oh, that has to do with software. But like a product manager, it exists like since we're building chairs or cars. It is the same. The scope is most the same. But I think that on what literature says is that the product owner, he is more of a tactical player. So imagine a flow of development that it is like this or like this, whatever it is. One extremity is how close you are to the client and to the team, like the day to day of the development. And on the other end, like the opposite, like how close you are to the stakeholders, how close you are to company strategy, and blah, blah, blah. So the product owner is more like here, the product manager is more like in the middle, and the product leader is more like here. So that has to do with how much tactical and how much strategical work you do. So like a product owner was supposed to be responsible for like, okay, we received this to build. What are the requirements of this feature? What are the technical aspects and limitations of it? Okay, how do we slice this? Let's build. And he managed that. While a product manager, like who is more intermediate, he was supposed to also conduct user reserves, to think how that feature fits into like a whole of the application, to have an eye for marketing. Okay, I will launch this, but how do I communicate that to the market? Uh, and he also is he's more closer to strategy. And then the leader is the same thing. He's like the far end of like he isn't into building, but he's more connected with strategy. But to be fair, like I think there is a trend that those the difference are like dissolved. It's more like how much experience do you have building products? So it's more like the owner is like an entry level, and the manager is like, oh, someone who is more seasoned and thus he has an eye for marketing, for strategy, and blah blah blah. So I think that those things have dissolved. What I see now as a trend is like a specialized product manager or owner specializing into finance, like you working with finance applications, versus a product manager who has a holistic view about the market and is more focused about like building impactful applications no matter the market.
I see. All right. And to put it in, then somebody who's looking this from the outside in, completely
Mm.
didn't know anything, but is attracted by the idea of working within product, within that department. What are the main skills? I guess if the lines are beginning to blur between a product owner and a product manager, but at least they can aim for a certain skill set. What is that skill set that they definitely need in order to break into the industry?
Resilience is the first one. And I don't mean this as like a catchphrase. Like a lot of the work of and perhaps that's the main difference between a product and a product and a project manager. A lot of the work of a product manager happens when you do not have control of much of what is going on. Like, it's almost like you are walking into a room. You are supposed to go until the end of this room. It has like 100 meters, but you only have visibility about the first 10. So you need to be able to feel cozy with, okay, I'm doing things that I don't know 100% what how this will unfold. So resilience is one thing. The second skill of the skill set, I'll say that it is the ability to quickly detach and say no. One of the main mistakes that I have made was to fall in love with my products. Like, no, this is the product. Like, this is the application, and it wasn't. Like, and it's cool that you make mistakes. This is also something that you need to like to to be at ease with making mistakes. But as as sooner as you realize that your view about an application, your strategy about how I will build those releases, as soon as you realize this is not right, or maybe there's some better way to do it, sooner you can correct the course. Sooner you can save resources for the company. Sooner you can avoid your engineers doing rework, your designers, your QAs, and sooner you can deliver something that it is actually impactful. So resilience, the ability to say no, the ability to detach, and I think a good chess player, like to be a chess player is something important. Yeah, because to develop a product is like you advance bit by bit, and there is also some fight back. There's also some fight back from the stakeholders, which might be legit, because like you need to understand as a product professional that not everyone's inside your head. Actually, no one is inside your head, to better say it. And so not everyone can see the amazing things and the amazing strategy and context that you know because you are close to it, uh, or maybe a more illegitimate issues with the stakeholders. But there's also like the user, and this is something that I always use Microsoft Teams as the example. Not many companies use Teams as Microsoft intended to do, and that happens with product in general. Like, you will develop an application, you heard your client, you did all of your discovery to mitigate the risk of developing something that it isn't meaningful, and at the end you place the application like on the user hands, and they like it. It is powerful, but they don't use quite the way you envision. So like you're once again you're always making something for others. So you have to remember that there will be like a degree of surprise in how they adapt, and maybe you were counting on them adopting in a way so that your next step will be like this, and that. And if they adopt it in another way, you need to recalculate. So a bit of chess player, and political. Yeah, I think what would be those four: resilience, the ability to say no and to relinquish from things, uh, kind of a chess player, and political. Not every time you like you need to relate a lot. Like a product manager, he should be someone that is liked, because like your work is dependent in a high degree with the work of others, and so like you need to be someone that it is reliable, that it is likable, and you need to know when to reveal certain things. Like honesty is 80%. I think Doctor Who had that. There was a robot in Doctor Who that was like calibrated for 80% of honesty, something like that. Product manager is kind of like the same. Sometimes it's best if you don't reveal everything, because it may give birth to further discussions that you know is not necessary at that moment. But yeah,
All right, all right. Uh, I think to some extent, as you said, political. I also figured to some extent there's a lot of negotiation skills that you need to develop
yes,
along the way. And thinking about that, my question would be, where do you need to invest? Let's ask with invest. Where do you need to invest most of your time as a product manager? Like, Are you looking towards the team? Is that where the main area of maybe pushback or conversations is happening, or is it towards the stakeholders, or is it towards the users? Just from your experience.
That that goes back once again to the role of a product manager is not the same in every company, and sometimes it's not the same like even between your company. So that depends on the context that you are. Like I worked on a legal tech uh, a year and something ago, in which when I joined, the main the main phenomenon that was going behind the team that I was supposed to take was the merging of two teams with a lot of people that were exchanging companies. A lot of people were leaving our company, and a lot of people were coming, especially from product more than engineering and product and design. That led to a context in which the team felt unmotivated. The team felt that, okay, those folks are coming to change what we're doing. And so the team was a factor of resistance to what I, as the new product manager, was trying to implement and understand the best way to work. I don't think that's usually the most frequent ways. Usually, you negotiate more with stakeholders, and it's mainly because I think it was Steve Jobs, who said that building a product, it's keeping a lot of information and a lot of details inside your head of how those things go together. And a bit of those informations are strategy, because you're always releasing one thing with an eye on like the next four things, so that you have a whole. The same way that I'm doing this as a product manager, a stakeholder who is like up in the chain of the business also has a strategy in his mind or her mind, a view of how the product should be now and in the future, how it communicates with the rest of the applications, and blah blah blah. So it's like a dance. You need to find a way. You need to find some common ground that delivers to you at the moment and in the future. And delivering to you means delivering to the customer in a way that you will have the outcome that the business wants, but it also delivers what the stakeholder wants and needs. So, and I think that the when you don't do that, the consequence is someone pulled the brake. That is the worst thing that can happen with a product team. Like you're halfway through building something. No, 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 stop. Or
Mm.
let's do it in another way and then rework. Like developers hate rework. They will curse you. Most likely they will curse you more than once. And the best way to avoid this is to invest on those negotiations early on. It's like an election. I may be going into harmful territory here, but I'll make that analogy. Like when you go into office, you will need to negotiate because you don't hold power alone. And usually, like the Congress is not so close to the demands of the ones who voted for that Congress. And maybe it's more like you will be bound to some conflict in like negotiations and like exchanges of views and different points of views. It might be better if you anticipate the conflict to the election. So the election is about plans. What do you intend to do? What is the chance of that falling apart? Where conflict should arise? How do you manage that conflict so that the population is voting on that? And then you have more energy and more force for when the conflict is about to happen with Congress. So you anticipate conflict. It's the same thing with product. If you involve your stakeholders, if you involve marketing, if you involve compliance because maybe it might be necessary, if you involve your designers, if you involve everyone earlier in the funnel, there is a higher chance, or to better say, there is a lower chance that you may have some event that you didn't foresaw in the ending of the funnel of release, and then someone who's above you ask you to pull the brake, or you work and you have delay and everything else. So negotiations are always to happen. It's best to anticipate those. I think that's the
You
advice here.
You also touched on some areas, and this is actually, I'm actually interested in this because I had different encounters with different product managers.
Mm,
And in those companies where you also have product owners and product managers, and then you would have maybe agile coaches and scrum masters, and there's a lot of hierarchy there. And
mm,
at some point, you did mention just earlier that you also looked at a team who was unhappy, who was resistant to change. So that also feels to me like it walks a bit on the scrum master's territory, for example.
yes.
And I know you also walked a bit on the marketing side of things because you need to understand how that works. And to some extent, you're also gonna have your fingers in the design area.
Yes.
So this is kind of in between a lot of things. And how, like in your experience, how did you avoid stepping on each other's toes in the past? Because there's a lot of roles in the same kind of area, and a lot of the times I actually found that it's super poorly defined. Like you join a company and then you just expected to do, let's say, things, or you have some responsibilities which are typical to your role, but at the same time you kind of have to do a few more which are not typical to your role,
Mm.
and that is really poorly defined. So how did you manage that? How did you navigate that? Any tips, any experience points?
There is one analogy that I learned once a few years ago, and I think it's the best analogy to describe a product manager, especially on that case, which is like imagine yourself not as a product manager, but as a product maestro, like the maestro of an orchestra. You don't play the violin, you don't play the flute, you don't commercialize the tickets, you don't you don't play any of the instruments, but you know how to play a violin, you know how to play a flute, you know how to play whatever it is. You know which songs, in which part of the song, each of those has to play. But you do not take their spotlight. You do not execute the task for them. But you keep an eye for like everything. You see if anyone is about to need help, and you help like before the help's needed, because it helps like the overall arrangement. You are like the maybe the not so great part of this is that the maestro is always on the spotlight, but you always see that at the end of the orchestra, the maestro takes the spotlight to the actual orchestra. And more than that, you do all of this, like you conduct marketing, you conduct the marketing efforts, you conduct the development efforts, the designing efforts, like placing a bit of opinion here and there because you need to know about this, and you keep everything close together in your mind because everything needs to make sense together. And on the background, you have an eye, you have an ear, in the case of the maestro, to the audience, which is your customer. So when I heard that analogy, I said, it makes sense. And I think that the main thing that it replies to the question that you made is that you are not playing the violin. So you are not coding, you are not making the design. You as a product manager, you need to have knowledge about this, but you are not the expert on it.
Do you also need
So
to be technical?
you, maybe needs a strong term for the technical part, but as much as you can understand about the technical aspect, and by experience you will eventually learning a bit. It will make more sense to you the whole of the puzzle. Like let's use a dumb example. I want to build a quantum computer. If I know nothing about the technical aspect, I know nothing about the feasibility of it, and I may estimate, 2 months I build it. It's actually like a year. So if you have some of the the technical knowledge about the requirements, you will have better estimates. If not for the stakeholders, for yourself. If you are more familiar with design and user experience, you will be one step closer in avoiding that users don't understand your application after it's launched and they click on the wrong side, or they do not see something that you wanted to see because the design isn't as clear for others as it was for you. If you know a bit of marketing, you avoid the mistake of I ship at the best of the applications, but my communications were wrong. They didn't highlight the strong points. So it's more about like this. You need to know, you need to be a bit of technical in those other realms, but you're not the specialist, and you need to keep all of those details together so that they work cohesively. And perhaps that's the whole of a product manager, and that is why you have that meme. So okay, so you don't code, you don't do the marketing campaign, you don't build the Figma. What do you do in the end? Okay, so we make sure that everything's tied together, and the end, the result is an application that's effective into easing the user lives.
We try that as well as Scrum Masters.
Oh
We
yeah,
have the
that's
same meme.
fun as well.
We suffer the same.
Actually, speaking of that, I do want to ask you, especially the analogy that you used for product owners. It's very similar to an analogy that we basically used to, well, we used to describe what a Scrum Master slash Agile
Hmm.
coach does. And of course, the focus is slightly different with the marketing, with the whole, you're more product oriented, while we're a Scrum Master slash Agile coach will be more like team and engineering oriented, workflow oriented. But I wanted to ask, how do you see the interactions between, or how do you interact yourself with the Scrum Master or an Agile coach, or do you often interact with them? Do you find them useful towards helping you, or is it getting in the way? Because I've heard both stories both ways.
Well, I think all of those can happen. Once again, it depends on the
At the
context
same
in
time.
which you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time. But I think that also is tied to what Andre said, and I will say that, let's say that I am a polyvalent product manager because the context of the company is demanding. So I know about design, I know about this and that, and for some reason we do not have a designer. I can design. So let's say that for some reason the team doesn't have a scrum master, a polyvalent product manager. He can have the eye that the scrum master has for like the ways of working. But if you have, like, it's one last thing that you can remove from your mind. It's one, and that may be like an extra space that, okay, so I remove the main responsibility of keeping an eye. Think, imagine that I'm Dumbledore on Harry Potter, like removing that line from my head, and now I have the space and I need to place another detail about the product. So if you have the specialist on something, like, allow them to be the specialist of something. So if I have a scrum master, I share a lot the load of having an eye for how the team is working and how we can improve that than if I didn't have one. The same thing for a designer. The same thing that if I have someone from the marketing, you never have a product marketer on your team, but there may be contexts in which you have someone from marketing working closely with you on specific project, and thus you have someone to share the marketing load. So it's more like that. And let's say that you have
So
no one,
having
you are like, the team is just you, then you need to like be the scrum master of yourself. You need to code, you need to do, yeah, that would be the analogy.
Yeah, actually, this is so for someone who's listening or watching, and let's say they're not in tech right now, and they want
Mm.
to get into tech, and they hear all of these things that you need to do, or you should be able to do, or it would be ideal for you to know. It may sound quite scary for someone who doesn't know. Like maybe they want to be a product manager. How
Mm.
do they get into this? What would be, let's say, what would be a relatively safe way to learn and to grow into this role? Because I mean, it's not really, you cannot become a product manager by doing an internship usually.
Yes. Well, in in that sense, I may contradict myself in the beginning, in the sense that it is a bit new in terms that you do not have like a bachelor degree for it. So in that sense, maybe a new profession in the market. So which does not mean that you can let go of formal training. There are today a lot of trainings. Perhaps the most common one is the CSPO, the certified Scrum product owner. And I would say that if you are like if you are completely new, and if by anything that we have said so far, you feel a bit more intimidated. Oh, I need to know a lot of stuff. I need to relate myself. I need to be very sociable and blah blah blah. Maybe have some formal training first. Some formal training. There are a load of books about Scrum, about agile ways of working, about product itself. But I think that nothing will substitute the practice. Like 1 year building an application for someone with a specific goal, like to actual like 6 months, you will get the hang of what a
Mhm.
product manager is supposed to do. After that is improvement, and that like the main thing for improvement is what I said before. Now I will not contradict myself. Be open to failure, like, and that's something hard because you need the company to also be open to failure. But we operate in the space of failure. Like not every single aspect of software that we will release will work out as we design it. But when it
But
works,
maybe before that, just one step before that, how do we? So you read books and you learn about agile ways of working, but maybe you don't have the opportunity to work on a product because for someone who is not really tech, I don't know, oriented, and they want to get into this right now and they want to start learning, how would they do that? Where which role would be best to start with? Because like I mentioned,
okay.
I haven't seen internships for product managers lately, at least. So then you would still need to have some experience in some of these areas that do work in product or well, product teams at least.
I recall that LinkedIn, I think it was LinkedIn, it had a feature which it was some sort of diagram that showed you like, okay, this here's the professional that I'm searching for. It showed you the professions that tend to eventually go to that profession, and like the other side of the funnel, the professions in which this one usually tend to go to. And for product ownership, considering that this is the entry point, if I'm not mistaken, by in if I'm not mistaken, I would agree with that, is a business analyst. So a business analyst is perhaps the closest that you are from a product owner in terms of like an entry point. A designer as well, like a product designer or a designer, is also like a closer aspect of it. Maybe a developer, like I think that today it became a bit less common to have developers that migrate to a more product angle, but can also be like an entry point. But if you are a developer, then I think that is the specific case that you ask. Like you are already in tech if you are a developer, but maybe a business analyst or a designer.
What about a entrepreneur? Something that I caught when what you said earlier about the way that that's when you almost discovered the product owner role. Is that I know it's not a role in a company, but
Yeah.
that does seem like it's a pathway that takes you into at least thinking that way or gaining the skills.
Well, once again, it depends a lot on. Let's assume that we are looking from my journey. So I eventually became someone from product, and I started as an entrepreneur. I can say that it was like a powerful fast track because the skill set that I describe it as a powerful one for a product professional, you are bound almost like as a trial of fire to develop by being an entrepreneur. So like you learn to work under pressure. If not the pressure like around you, the pressure that you place upon yourself, like this is mine. I have a sense of ownership of this. There are people who depend on me. You learn a lot. It may sound counterintuitive, but you learn a lot about negotiating and negotiating with stakeholders because as the owner of something, as the entrepreneur of something, you have your will. Like the floor is yours to implement the will, but you will learn that maybe it's not your will the one who sells it. Maybe there are people who you hire that not only can,
Oh,
but okay,
abracadabra.
I think I'm back. I
Hold
think it
on,
was my
Rael,
connection.
you're muted if you are.
Am I here?
I think he's reconnecting now.
Am I here now? Hello, hello, hello. Am I
You're
here?
back.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
back, but you
perfect.
are muted.
On mute, but that's the classic. Can you hear me? Can you see my
I
screen?
can hear you guys. I can see your
Okay.
screen. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you're back.
That's
You're
funny
back.
because I wasn't muted at all. You see, technology sometimes doesn't work as the user intended. But coming to where I was, so it's a trial of fire. So it fosters a fast track for you to develop that skill set. So, and what I was specifically saying was that sometimes you have the floor is yours to implement the view that you think will sell, but maybe that's not the view your customers want. Maybe, and most likely, if you hire like efficiently, the specialists that you hired will improve your view. You need to let go of some of your view so that the overall can advance. So I think that it's an ad hoc role to enter the product realm, but it is a powerful one. Like being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur helps you with a lot of stuff that you will undergo in product manager.
But is it a clear advantage over not doing that? Effectively, if you were in a position right now where you had to hire a product owner for your own company, and you had candidate A that used to be an entrepreneur, candidate B that went to university, became a business analyst, and now is looking to step up to become a product owner, which one do you go for?
That's a hard one. I'll be honest, and I think there is bias on this.
Yeah, of
Since
course.
since like it touches to my story, I might be inclined to go with the one that was an entrepreneur, and on that, I will be like saying that I think it is an advantage. I think that maybe in general, I wouldn't say that like it's like a rule. If you are a product manager that was an entrepreneur once, or in the middle of your career you were an entrepreneur, then come back, I don't think it's a rule that you will be better. But it is likely that exercising the role of an entrepreneur will help you exercising the role of a product manager. But I think yes, I might hire.
I would pick whoever is better. To answer your question, Vlad.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay, okay.
It wasn't a trick question,
Was
I
my
think, by the
mistake?
way, Rad.
No,
Was my mistake? I should
no,
have.
no.
Okay.
It
I
well,
wasn't
no, no.
political enough. I wasn't
It
political
wasn't a
enough.
trick question, and but it genuinely what the question I guess is who is better, because it's a bit of a heuristic question to kind of just
Yeah,
say I
but
think who's better,
I,
but
I would argue that I like this answer. It depends. Because I would
yeah,
argue that maybe you do have someone with a lot of experience in entrepreneurship, and then he's super proactive or she's super proactive, and they end up being a really good candidate. Whilst someone who maybe just goes through university just to finish a degree and then becomes a
of
business
course.
analyst, and then maybe at some point figures, oh, this earns me more money, so 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 that
Well, of course, everything is pending an interview, so you get to
yeah.
Yeah,
kind of dig
yes.
into their past.
And there's
So
also that Andrew said, like it depends on the context. Maybe you are the hiring part. Maybe you want someone more proactive, more entrepreneur, to the point that you don't need to like step into that role so much, and you can be more like freer to pursue other things that the hiring manager would do. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you want, because your company is like that, maybe you want someone
yeah.
to work in a more hierarchical environment. So it does depends. But yeah, I would not run from the question. I think that once again, exercising the skills of an entrepreneur help you a lot if you have the environment in the company for that to exercise the skills of efficient product manager.
Mhm. S- One thing I want to ask. So, if someone were to come to me this year. Actually, someone has come to me this year, and they will say, "I want to become a Scrum Master, whatever you do." It was in my case. But if they were to come to you and say, "I want to become a product owner or a product manager," how do you think the market is right now? Where do you see the market going? Because for the agile side of things, for agile coach role, for Scrum Master roles, I see I saw a decline starting like 2 years ago, and I think
Mm.
it's still declining to some extent, and at some point it may come back. Most likely it will end up coming back, but for the product manager role I have no insights. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think there are at least three answers for this. One is just as you said, like I think the market for any profession that is tied to the digital world, it's less heated now than it was 2 years ago. And it's funny because I made that comment a while back in a class that I was teaching in a product educational program, and someone said, "But how could it been like the market could have been more heated amidst the pandemic?" That is because when we were at the pandemic world, like we were mainly at home, so we started to use much more some digital stuff, and a lot of companies, especially big companies, they invested much more in things that are tied to digital experiences. And now that has passed. So it's almost like if we look 2 years ago, we had a more heated market. But if we look at 3 years ago, the market was just like as it is today. So I think we just came back for product, for Scrum, for developers. I think we just came back to 2018, maybe. Uh, Other than that, I feel that there are more professionals now on the market. So we are not so much as the last jewel of the crown. There are a lot more people, so the salaries they declined a bit. I think this is more especially true for developers than the rest of us product team, Scrum designers, product managers, and specifically, and that's the last one for product. Is what I mentioned before. I think that the main trend is that picking the analogy of what you guys asked. If I would choose someone that was an entrepreneur versus someone that had a bachelor, I think that what the trend is now, I want to choose someone. I work in a financial company. I want to choose a product manager that has a history with financial products versus that hyper specialization is not an important factor for me as a hiring manager. I dislike the specialization. Like I think that it is as important for you as a product professional to know your market as it is to know your stakeholders, your team, and your users. But you learn that, and you learn that like in 3 months, 4 months, maybe less than that. You can already operate in a good pace, and so I don't see that hyper specialization as a valuable thing. Like to overcome someone that has like, oh, I know how products behave like this, like that, on that market, that other one. Someone that has a more holistic experience in actually building solutions that people want to use. But I think that the trend is the other way. I think that the market wants more the hyper specialization. For Brazil, that's like 100% true. I know that for sure. But I also have the sense that maybe not so much as Brazil, but that side of the trend, hyper specialization, right now is triumphing over the. That's not important to me as a hiring manager.
I see. But also, as part of, I guess, the trend towards hyper specialization, do you get the feeling that, or to put it more bluntly, is it a good time to be a junior? Is it a good time to start in the industry?
No, I know, and I don't think that is true for product. I don't think that's true for developers. I don't think that's true for agile professionals. Yeah, that you placed a good point. There's also a trend that, oh, who told me that? I heard that like a few days ago, speaking with someone, and they said, "I want to introduce more seniority to my team." I think that is a trend, and that's an issue, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah, it
maybe not
makes
for
sense.
me, because like
Yeah.
I'm the hiring manager, so I'm looking for my company goals. But for the overall market, like there is a flow. Like senior professionals now will retire, and you need to have like a constant flow of the market. How will you have the senior of 10 years from now if he's not if he, as a junior now he doesn't find his or her space? So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. It doesn't. So I saw a decline in, for example, in internships, which is a good sign that
Mm.
things are not
Yeah,
going
it's
as
the
well
same.
as
Yeah.
they used to go. And indeed, yeah, the market right now does seem to. I'm not sure if it's back to 2018. I don't recall exactly how it was, but it does feel
Mm.
like definitely we're back in time at some point. But there should be a boom. I am hoping there's a boom because they should work in
No, I
cycles.
agree. I agree. Yeah, exactly. Those things they work in cycles. Doesn't necessarily mean that the next cycle will be precisely the same as this one or that other
Hmm.
cycle, but the cyclical behavior, I think that portion is true. We are almost always in cycles.
And
But
will
I
this
think that's
role
something.
survive the change?
It is. It is. And it is for two things, for two reasons. Maybe three, if not two, three, but like we can group at least two. First, we are not moving away from the digital world. So 20 years from now, we will still be relating as often, maybe more, although I don't see how we can relate more with technology than how we relate today. So we will still need to have the digital applications builders, engineers, designers, agiles, and product. And specifically for product, the need for someone that it is closer to the team, but it is also close to the stakeholders and does the business. And so he has the eye for extracting the best that can be extracted in terms of return of investment. That will not go away as well. Because if you remove me as the product manager, that means that someone in the business needs to either come down to this more tactical, strategical role, or you need someone from the team, like an engineer, agile professional, or designer, to have that eye for, okay, this will have this return of investment, this will increase CSAT like this will generate that revenue, this will defend that churn. Both of those seems unlikely, because if any of those happens, you have another role, another hole at some point. So I don't think that for like a development professionals or for product managers, I don't see a 20-year future in which we don't have our jobs anymore. But that's how history is. We rarely
Yeah.
anticipate change. But yeah, I feel I have
Yeah, I
34, about to make 34. I think I'll have my job at 54 when I'm about to retire.
nice, nice. The reason why I asked is because I did have this conversation with Vlad a while back because we did see a decline in roles in IT, but for our roles as well. And my idea is that when there's going to be a comeback for IT sector, but also for the Scrum Master role, I feel like there's a lot of average Scrum Masters or even bad Scrum Masters that masquerade as Scrum Masters because they have the CSM or the PSM and they end up doing the minimum requirements and that's it. And I feel like the role needs to change. So in order to survive the boom, I think the role needs to adapt to something a bit more hands-on, maybe a bit more bird's eye view. And that's why I asked, like, how do you see your role adapting to the new change?
I I'm not able to estimate that future. But what I can say is that looking back 10 years ago, I think we are now, maybe we are now start, maybe that hyper specialization is the beginning, the main point of a new cycle of a big adoption of the product profession. But I noticed one on the last 10 years, which is that blur between manager and owner. That is one of the aspects that changed. So you are more expected now as a product professional to know about marketing, to know about analytics, to know about how to use data, how to use an SQL, because you need data to perform. And I think there's a word for this. You are more expected now to be autonomous as a product professional. And to be autonomous, you need to know more about marketing because that's part of your job. You need to know more about data because that's part of your job. You, it's best that you know more about coding because that's a great part of your job. You need to know about handling people and being a good leader, and to be a good someone that is led when needed because that's part of your job. So I think that was
Mhm.
one of the shifts for the last 10 years. But I'm unable to
Yeah,
project what will become the next step.
but that is a good point. And the way that you put it about hyper specialization, do you think is that not making yourself vulnerable to change, especially if something like creative destruction happens? And well, basically, I just remembered seeing the news of, I don't know if you've seen this, the new Meta glasses that made
Oh
with
yeah,
Ray Ban. So
yeah.
it's not necessarily that product, but the way that it was referred to, that would be the new iPhone, which would just create a whole different environment that requires technology, requires software, but all of your specializations for iOS, for Android would be out the window. So you'd effectively, isn't specialization a risky move, or hyper specialization to be more specific?
I think you translated better than I could what I think, because like
Right.
yes, it is, and that. Oh, I think Andre fell. It
Andre,
might,
yeah, no,
yeah, might
that's
be
fine.
his energy. I
Yeah,
think yes, and I think that in the end, I was joking that you translated better because I think in the end that's why a generalist, but I think holistic is the best word here. It will
yeah,
triumph over someone that it is like hyper specialized, because one of the let's assume that the media glasses worked, or that the web 3.0 that we saw like, I think 2 years ago, that this had actually worked, and the future was, the next 2 years were very different from the last 10. Then a hyper specialized professional, at least he needs to high specialize again on the new
yeah,
specialization. But what I think, trying to place myself on the shoes of folks who are deeming hyper specialization, no, 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 this is very important to me as a hiring manager. I think it's like a safe move for them. So like I work at a finance company, so it makes much more sense that we have people who are used to work with finance applications and solutions, because like there is less chance of them not succeeding here because they are used to it. And I think it's the
yeah,
same argument with juniors. So if I hire a junior, it means that I'm committing more time, more effort, more money, more investment, and having like a higher time of return on this. I think it's that the perspective of the other side is this, but I agree much more with what you said.
yeah, yeah. Well, I can completely understand it from the point of view of the companies. It's more productivity for their specific, I guess, business case if they have somebody hyper specialized in exactly what they
Which
do.
I don't agree. I think they think
Yeah,
that,
well,
but I don't agree.
yes, but that's the is the trap that they think of it, but that they think. But if, for them, it's also business, which is very harsh. Like, this is one thing that I think people that are employees don't kind of think this way. That they want you to be hyper specialized, but as soon as your hyper specialization ceases to be useful, you're out
They
like
discard.
that. Like
Yeah.
there's no like patience about, okay, let's see if we can retrain you or if you can help you move
Yes.
on. So
Yes. And that like business will always be this. Uh,
yeah,
I don't think that's like for product professionals only, but you
no,
need. And I
it's a
always
general
tell this
thing.
to my. I always tell this to my younger brother, and he's not on the engineering or product realm. He's like a chemistry engineering. You need to be
Oh,
the advocate of your own career because like no one is more interested than you on that, and because you may work on the greatest company, what's like that ever existed. In the end, the company will think on themselves because if they need to survive, and if to survive they need to get rid of you, they will. And it's the same argument that you made. Like if your hyper specialization served 5 years ago when you were hired, and that was like the differentiator, cool, you were hired. But if 5 years from now that becomes like the other way around, they will
yeah.
not hesitate
No,
to cut you.
completely agree, and which is why, yeah, you shouldn't. I guess I have met a lot of people that have this perception of loyalty towards the company that hired them. When it comes to, they have a opportunity to move on, learn something more, or kind of get a role that would step them up and I guess progress in their career, and they have this hesitation of, well, this company gave me a chance. I understand
Yeah.
that, but at the end of the day, business is business. You have the
Yes.
opportunity to move up. If the business would have the opportunity to step up by getting rid of you, they would do the same. So in this
Yeah.
case, I would. That's the way that I also view hyper specialization. It's the, they're looking out for themselves. So be very very cautious when it comes to I guess listening to their advice and going down that road.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. Like always work the best that you can while you are there, but keep in mind that the market changes and
Yeah,
that not only you need to be aware of that, but your company will be aware of that, and the company will try to survive first, then making you survive. And if like an evolution in your career comes up, then it's the time in which you think, like, yeah, always be the advocate of your career.
so very
Hey,
very well
Henry,
put.
Hey,
Hello.
I'm back.
energy.
Yeah.
Okay, we thought so.
Right, but that is, well, actually, on looking at it on the hour as well. I guess under the, can you think of anything else that you want to cover?
I'll ask just one thing. We did touch on people who don't know what product management is. For someone who does know or is in the business, can you recommend one book or one podcast or one source of information which you think is awesome and you want to recommend it?
For someone who's already in the business,
Yeah, let's say someone who's, I wouldn't say junior, but is getting to know how things work and is kind of at mid level and wants to grow.
okay, I will assume that's not a tricky question, so I'll give more than one,
No, no, it's
and
not.
then the audience can choose, and I'll make my personal suggestion on that. Like
Yeah.
you have a bunch of skilled and famous product professionals. You have Melissa Perry. She's on LinkedIn. She's usually sharing a lot of useful insights for someone from someone who had experience in career. And she had a few books. There is also, oh my god, I forgot his name. It's the Pope of product. Like it's Melissa and him.
Roman Pitchler?
No, but it will come to my mind. Uh, but I think that my main advice would be thinking again that becoming a product manager is keeping a lot of different pieces inside your head. and those pieces they are roots of a tree, and there's the marketing root and blah blah blah. Pick a source of knowledge that you feel that it is your weakest one. So, oh, maybe I need to strengthen my game on the coding part. Pick podcasts, pick friends, pick colleagues, pick books that are like discuss more this aspect. Or I did that like 3 years ago. I felt that my marketing skills were not as they should, so I started to read marketing books, to buy marketing courses. So I would advise this for a more general view. Melissa Perry, or let me check. I forgot his name. It's Discovery Habits. Teresa Torres.
Oh, there's Doris.
Yeah. So they are they are maybe two of the five main product professionals in the market. But for more like focused areas, try to see the one that you think you can. It might serve you more on the near term by upping your game on it, and then get yourself into it. Courses or books. I like very much the. I forgot the name of the Scrum one, the Red, in which he explained the shoot a high. I like that one of
Ah,
the.
Shuhari. Uh,
I
we'll
forgot.
come back to that one.
Yeah, I don't have it here. It's on the living room. But yeah, I like that book very much, so that you learn about how to engage the process of development something that is actually meaningful. But yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot of stuff too.
All right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is roughly it. Thank you very much, Rael.
Thank you
It
very
was
My
actually
pleasure.
very insightful.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Hopefully, it was my mistakes. Anything that I may have
Yeah, we'll
shared
see them in
here.
the comments if there's any mistakes.
Most likely, no, most likely, yeah. It
as
must
as
maybe be,
loudly and as angrily as possible. See them in comments.
but I'm used to that. That's like remember
Yeah,
I had those on Steam, so yeah. And I
that's
also
one
work
form
it
of
for
feedback.
I also work in the gaming industry was like for kids, and kids can be mean, man. So I'm used to that.
All right. Then we support angry comments in the comment section for whatever
Please,
bothers you.
4 out of 10 in terms of angry comments, please.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Let's keep it light. All right. Since we don't
Okay,
know how to start, we also don't know how to end. So I
makes
guess with that
sense.
being said, thank you for tuning in and see you next time.
Bye, bye, folks.